Good afternoon, colleagues. Moeni. So,
Oh, the meeting didn't start yet.
No, Councillor, we're about to start now. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors. Thank you for joining me again on our Water Wednesday webinar. And you will recall that the purpose of these opportunities really is for water and sanitation to give not only the councillors who attend, but also members of the public who attend these sessions, an opportunity to look behind the scenes of the almost mind-boggling, I would say, projects that are on our to-do list in the directorate. Mind-boggling simply for the fact that the scale of which we are undertaking work within this directorate, I think, is one that would impress every single attendee in this meeting, and also those who will hopefully read some of the information that we put out. So to kick off this evening's presentation, we are focusing tonight once again on our new water program. You will recall in our first session that we focused very much on the overview of our water and sanitation budget, a capital program of about 5 billion rand that we are in charge of making sure we spend on projects that will impact our communities positively across our metro. And so today we start our deep dive into our new water program specifically. And I hope, especially for the councillors in attendance, that when I say new water program, you are triggered to remember that the city has made a commitment, our mayor has made a commitment that by about 2030, we will be producing 300 million liters of new water from new water sources by that time. And these new water sources mean that we will be transitioning away from a total reliance on surface water supply, so our dams. And these new water sources, councillors and ladies and gentlemen who are joining us, is essentially, and I hope that you will help to remember and help remind your residents of these programs as well, that it includes our investments towards desalination. It includes our investments towards water reuse. It includes our investments towards alien invasive plant removal. And as we will hear tonight, will include our investments towards responsibly accessing and abstracting from our groundwater supply. So there's a lot of work currently underway in that space, particularly a lot of work in our Atlantis aquifer, a lot of work in the Cape Flats aquifer, a lot of work in the Table Mountain Group Aquifer. And so I hope that the presentation, which will be presented this evening by Pilani Msimango, Senior Professional Officer, will enlighten you around the specifics of that project, but also excite you about the potential of our new water program in terms of our water security going towards the future in a space of climate unpredictability. So without any further ado, let me hand straight over to Pilani. Pilani, welcome to the Water Wednesday webinar. Would you mind to project your presentation? And whilst you are doing so, for me to remind the attendees this evening to please remain on mute. Please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, or put your question into the chat box and we will invite you to ask your question at the end of the presentation. Pilani, I see you're projecting your screen, so we are ready for you. You, Pilani, have until 6:30, and then we will want to start the question session at about that time. So 6:30, 6:35. Over to you, Pilani. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Badruddin. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for the opportunity to present on this wonderful topic, the city's groundwater schemes that we've developed. Just to mention that the authors of the presentation is not just myself. It's been a contribution from my colleague, Daniel Mulder, David Orpas, and Dr. Lloyd Fisher-Chess. So in terms of the presentation that I'll be giving you today, this is just the outline of it. I'll just introduce you in terms of the groundwater schemes as part of the New Water program. Just take you through a few basics from or geohydrological concepts that will help you understand the schemes that we are working on. And then, yeah, just give you an introduction of the various schemes, which is the Table Mountain Group Aquifers. We tapped into the Table Mountain Group Aquifers for groundwater abstraction. There's the Cape Flats Aquifer, which is a groundwater abstraction and managed aquifer recharge scheme, and the Atlantis Water Resource Management Scheme, which is sort of a scheme that's been in operation since the 1970s, but we've just refurbished it recently. And then just touch on a few challenges and opportunities that has taken us through this journey of groundwater development. So the city has sort of earmarked the diversification of its water supply, as you might know, as part of the commitments that's been put forward in the water strategy to achieve a sufficient and reliable water from diverse sources. And so as part of that diversification, we had looked at... Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, so sorry. It seems as if there's a delay in when you change the slide. So I see your slide has now changed. So I just wanted to point out. Thank you. Okay, apologies for that. So as the Councillor Badruddin touched on the diversification of our water sources, groundwater has been earmarked or had been earmarked by the cities for a long time. But with the recent crisis that we fell into as a city, we had sort of fast-tracked the development of the Table Mountain Group scheme, or in Steenbras, the development of the Cape Flats Aquifer Management Scheme, which is a groundwater abstraction and managed aquifer recharge scheme, but also the refurbishment of the existing Atlantis Water Resource Management Scheme, as I've said, which has been in existence since the 1970s. And so, yeah, there's a lot of investment that the city has put forward with regards to the development of the schemes. So from a basics or basic terminology basis, what is exactly groundwater? So groundwater basically is water found underground in the cracks and spaces in soil, sand, and rock. It basically exists in the saturated zone beneath the land surface, filling in the pores and fractures of the rock formation or the unconsolidated material, and stored in the geological formation on what we call aquifers. Now, from a National Water Act definition, an aquifer is sort of a water-bearing formation, or it's a geological feature of a geological formation with structures and textures that hold water and allow for appreciable movement of water between them. Now we have your confined and unconfined sort of aquifers that you have to deal with. In the illustration that we have here, we have an unconfined aquifer, which basically means that the upper surface of the aquifer is sort of not overlain by an impermeable surface. And with the confined sort of condition, you have the upper surface of the aquifer sort of overlain by a permeable surface material. And obviously, there's various types of aquifers that you have to deal with. You have your primary aquifers, basically, which is the water is stored, or it moves in between the original intergranular spaces, or the pores and the voids that are in between the material. A typical example that we have is the Atlantis Aquifer and the Cape Flats Aquifer that we are tapping into it. I'll get into more detail in terms of how we're going to be abstracting
or how the schemes will be operating in further slides. Then you have your secondary aquifers, which is basically the water moves or the water is stored in the secondary openings, your cracks, your fissures, the faults, any discontinuities which basically develop after the rock has been formed. And a typical example is the TMGA, which is the Table Mountain Group Aquifers that we're tapping into, the peninsula and the deeper peninsular aquifers and the sort of shallower Nado aquifers that we're tapping into. You also have your karstic, aquifers, your limestone dolomites that are not necessarily, as the city of Cape Town, we haven't really tapped into those. Obviously, as you may be aware, groundwater forms part of the broader hydrological cycle, and obviously, one of the main drivers is the recharge, which basically originates from precipitation. Now, all of these aquifers that we have tapped into, we've tapped into because of the potential of the storage capacity and amount of volume that we can get due to the existing porous characteristics of the aquifer and the geological events that actually influence the features such as your cracks and faults that might occur. Now, obviously, in addition to that, the major factor or the major driver is your rainfall, which basically dictates, how much the amount of recharge that you can get into the aquifer or that can be stored into the aquifer. Now, in an urbanized sort of setting, such as where your Cape Flats and to a certain extent the Atlantis aquifers are actually situated in, you might find that natural recharge has been compromised to a certain extent because of the hardening of the surfaces as a result of development that has taken place. Now, with the compromise of recharge, you're not necessarily getting the necessary recharge from rainfall as you might expect. And so from an adaptive management perspective, if you want to be tapping into these resources, we have to go through a process of what we call managed aquifer recharge, where we basically put in water, as a sort of an additional storage medium in the aquifer, but also to improve the quality of the water that is found in the specific aquifer. And so that's basically the reason or the driving force that sort of led to why mainly the managed aquifer recharge processes are actually implemented in the Cape Flats aquifer and has been done so in Atlantis versus looking at the fractured rock aquifer in the Steenbras, sort of the closer to the Gordons Bay area. So that's basically the major driving force to that. So let's get into the details in terms of the three schemes that we've developed as a city. The Table Mountain Group Aquifer, excuse me, which is the Steenbras Wellfield, as is located, as indicated on the map there. It's basically located in this vicinity. Let me just get a pointer here. In this vicinity here. And so from a development perspective, this is basically an illustration that we have, and these illustrations are also available, for education and awareness purposes. But as I've touched in, as I've indicated with the TMGA or the Table Mountain Group Aquifers, we've tapped into the fractured rock aquifers, the deeper peninsular aquifers, as indicated in this illustration here. That's the deeper peninsular aquifers and the shallower Nado aquifers. Groundwater is abstracted and will be sort of at some stage, treated, undergo through the water treatment process, and then some of it is going to be discharged into the dam, the Steenbras dam, and then from there it will be abstracted into the and taken into the water treatment plant for further treatment, and then distributed into the network. And so this is basically a typical, looking at the hydrogeological setting that was that influences the yields and the formation or the storage of the water. You can see that it's largely influenced by the Steenbras branch flare megafall, which runs in this sort of broader direction. And basically, this is sort of the complex geology that has influenced the formation of the rocks. The storage of the water in those rocks, and the heterogeneous nature of this hydrogeological setting allows us to or influences the yields and the high yielding of the individual boreholes. And so we have a high yielding boreholes of up to 50 liters per second. And as you can see, these are the geological logs that were taken during the drilling process, and you can see the fractured nature of it and the discontinuities that can be identified. And then this is just an illustration of one of the production boreholes that was drilled or during the drilling process. And then that's just a map of the Steenbras Dam and Steenbras area with the individual boreholes that have been drilled at various depths, targeting the various aquifers, which is the Nado, the upper Nado aquifer, and the deeper peninsular aquifers. Now we've got like a fleet of around 11 production boreholes that have been equipped. This is just a typical look of how the pump house actually is. For security purposes, that's how we had to sort of construct it, given also the remote nature at which the scheme is actually at. But also the way that it's actually constructed, as you can see, it's to be with nature as far as possible. This is the length at which we had gone to from a development perspective to ensure that it also blends with the nature as well. So that particular pump house actually houses the infrastructure that allows us to abstract water from underneath the ground. And there's about 11 that has been fully equipped and that can provide us with roughly or just above 22 megaliters per day in production. There are additional that are being sort of equipped as well, and that's typically what it will look like from the inside. And this is just a typical sort of screenshot of the SCADA room and the displays that help us from a monitoring of the infrastructure and abstraction perspective, and that gives us an indication of what is the current production that we are getting from the well field, and how we can actually set up the system to get what we require. So that's just the typical sort of representation in terms of from a management perspective of the infrastructure, but also from an abstraction perspective. And this is where we discharge into the upper Steenbras Dam. And so for us to continue sort of with this abstraction, we have to exercise, a duty of care and ensure that the environment is not particularly adversely affected because of our abstraction. And so what we had done, or what we've done with this abstraction is we've got a myriad of monitoring that we are conducting to ensure that we are not adversely impacting on the resource, but also to ensure that to ensure that the environment is not adversely impacted, and also to comply with the water use license conditions that have been afforded to us, because we have a water use license that was issued by the National Department of Water and Sanitation to ensure that we continue with these activities. Now, as part of the monitoring, we have, the groundwater level monitoring. There's water chemistry that's been done from a groundwater, from not just looking at the production boreholes, but also from a monitoring boreholes perspective. But we also look at the water chemistry in terms of the rivers that are found in, or the riverines that are found in the area. We also look at the channel water quality, water levels, and the flows of these rivers. There's also macro invertebrates to see if there's any losses, or impacts on the hohakis that are dependent on these riverines and these or wetlands that are found in the area. We have the soil moisture to also determine to help us determine if there is any potential impacts to the plant communities in the area, and also looking at the vegetation structures. And there's also the ecosips water levels that we are monitoring, but also this climatic monitoring that's also being done. And then there's also the habitat availability, just to ensure that we monitor any potential impacts, and we operate the scheme in a sustainable and environmentally friendly manner. And so, yeah, we've put in this. There's all of this monitoring that's currently taking place, and that we continuously we engage with the National Department and other stakeholders on it as well. Then I'm going to take you through the Cape Flats Aquifer Management Scheme, which is basically sort of an indirect portable reuse scheme where, and the reason why I'm actually stating this is we make use of, or we're going to be making use of treated effluent, which is going to undergo further treatment, and we're going to be recharging it in an aquifer. And so if I take you through the how the scheme is going to operate from 1 to 8. So the first part is the groundwater abstraction, which is basically a suite of well fields that are going to be abstracting groundwater. So it's a lot of boreholes that we've drilled in the Cape Flats area, and that's going, and from that abstraction, that water is going to undergo treatment up until SANS 241 standards, the latest SANS 241 standards, and then that's going to be distributed into the distribution network as part of number 3. So the citizens are going to enjoy this water, and then from that effluent that is generated from the relevant communities will go through the wastewater treatment works, and from that wastewater treatment work is going to undergo further treatment at the advanced water reclamation plant, which has just been completed next to the Cape Flats wastewater treatment works, and then from there, once it undergoes the advanced treatment, it's going to be recharged into the aquifer for storage purposes, but also to maintain the yields within the aquifer. And then also because we are looking at, or we are dealing with a coastal aquifer, you know, there is the risk, though, the potential risk of seawater intrusion as a result of abstraction. If we change the groundwater head, we might end up pulling in the seawater, and so there is going to be a seawater intrusion barrier. So from the advanced water reclamation plant, part of that water that is cleaned or that has been treated there is going to be used for saltwater intrusion, to create a saltwater intrusion barrier to prevent salt water from actually intruding into the aquifer. So as part of the Cape Flats abstraction and managed aquifer recharge scheme, we've got clusters where there's going to be an injection, and clusters where there's going to be abstraction. So the green sort of polygons, or the green shapes there represents the various abstraction well fields. So up in the north, for example, that's our Hanover Park abstraction well field, and in the Philippi abstraction well field, and you also have at this site, this is the Strandfontein West, which was commissioned and provide us to up to 5 megaliters per day, and then the red parts are the managed aquifer recharge, where we're going to be injecting using injection boreholes. So the water that is taken from the advanced water reclamation plant would be used to inject in various parts of the aquifer. At the Philippi area, for example, there's already abstraction taking place because of the large farming community that is in there, which allows us to have a bigger sort of storage or capability for storage there, which will allow us to have this MAR, or managed aquifer recharge, it being implemented there. And then obviously at the bottom here, this is these are the well fields that will allow us to create that saltwater intrusion barrier, as I was talking to earlier, because they are looking at an urban, a coastal aquifer setting. We need to ensure that we don't pull in that salt water, and so we'll have that saltwater intrusion barrier that will be recharging in that vicinity. Excuse me. So this is just typically the various sort of water treatment works that will be constructed and will be treating water to potable standards. You have the Hanover and Philippi Wellfield water treatment works that will provide up to about 10 megaliters per day. There's the Strandfontein West water treatment works that's projected to give us 5 megaliters per day, and obviously there's the Mitchell's Plain that will give us the 38 megaliters volume, and the last one, this is the advanced water reclamation plant, or the MAR reclamation plant that that has just been completed from the construction works, but it hasn't been commissioned yet because there's still the mechanical and electrical aspect of it that still needs to be completed. And then, during the development process, there was a myriad of boreholes that were drilled. We've got a fleet of around 66 production boreholes that can give us, the various capacities. And at the moment, the only commissioned is the 5 or 5.4 megaliters per day in Sanfontein West. That's the Sanfontein West wellfield. There's still additional boreholes that will be drilled to complete all of the wellfields. And there's also been injection boreholes that have been drilled throughout across the Cape Flats, and a myriad of monitoring boreholes as well established. And as part of the drilling or the development process, there was a lot of aquifer testing that was done, injection tests that have been done, and this is just a typical sort of or an illustration of a typical production boreholes, but also it has a weather station that can assist us in terms of measuring the climatic information that is needed for us to adequately manage the system. And this is just a typical monitoring boreholes has also been established for monitoring purposes. This is just from a groundwater, from a monitoring perspective and a compliance perspective with the relevant water use authorization. We have a myriad of monitoring boreholes as well, and we've been monitoring them throughout. This is just a typical sort of water level monitoring, of the Philippi sort of wellfield or the Philippi area. And as you can see, there's the sort of the, as I've indicated initially, because of the abstraction that's taking place as a result of the farming activities there, we have the potential there for MAR and more storage in that area. And so that's where we are going to be implementing the MAR there as well. And then as part of the management as well, we did what is called, or we developed what is called the groundwater protection zones, which basically looking at any potential contaminant that may, reach our specific well fields. We've sort of demarcated the specific areas within the Cape Flats into specific zones, and then obviously as a result of this, there's limitations in terms of what type of development would like to or would like to be implemented in those specific zones. And as with new developments, we've been having input in terms of what mitigation measures they need to be putting in place, but also discouraging specific land use development that put us, or put the well fields at risk. So we've got this in place, and we are implementing it, and we've just initiated a process where we've communicated with the local government, Department of Local Government, to also assist us in communicating with Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment to ensure that these groundwater protection zones are included in the screening tool, the National Environmental Screening Tool, so that the adequate mitigation measures are put forward by any new development that's going to be coming into place. What we've also done from a management perspective, what we've undergone a process of what we call mapping out of the potential contaminating activities, which is basically looking at the existing land use activities that pose a risk for us, and then ranking and looking at the level of risk, or looking at the potential risk of these land use activities, and start putting in mitigation measures from our side. So to ensure that we, even looking at the existing land use activities that might not necessarily be desirable for us, we need to ensure we need to start putting in mitigation measures in place for those as well, and not just the new developments. And then there's the Atlantis Water Resource Management Scheme, which is basically, as I've stated, it's a scheme that has been in operation since the 1970s. And that's the typical location, or the location of where it is. Excuse me. So Atlantis is sort of similar to Cape Flats in that it's a groundwater abstraction and managed aquifer recharge scheme. So as to take you through from 1 to 6B, or to take you through the process. Firstly, the 1 is the abstraction wellfield, which is basically the groundwater abstraction from the various bores that we have in place, which then goes to number 2, which is the treatment plant that's been treated there to potable standards and distributed to the network. And then from the citizens of Atlantis, you get your effluent that goes into the wastewater treatment works, the West Flair wastewater treatment works. Now the West Flair wastewater treatment works is divided into two components. There's the domestic effluent treatment works, and then you've got the industrial effluent treatment works. The domestic effluent treatment works that collects effluent from the residential area is conveyed into what we call the conditioning pond. But also the stormwater from the residential area as well is also conveyed into this conditioning pond where it mixes with this treated effluent and it goes through the reed bed. So it sort of goes through additional treatment, and then that is then recharged into where ponds where it's indicated as infiltration pond or 6A. That's where the managed aquifer recharge ponds are. Sort of where we recharge with that domestic effluent and the stormwater. And then from the industrial area side, the effluent from the industrial area and the stormwater from the noxious trade area in the industrial zone, that is conveyed into the coastal recharge ponds, which is at 6B, which is basically closer to the coast, and that helps sort of create a saltwater intrusion barrier there in that zone as well. So also, as I've stated with the Cape Flats, we need to ensure that we don't pull in that salt water because we are in the coast, we are dealing with coastal aquifers, and so we've got those coastal infiltration ponds with the treated industrial effluent. So the treated domestic effluent from the West Flair plant is used for recharge upgrading of our wellfield, and the industrial effluent is recharged into the coastal ponds, downgrading of our wellfield. I think it's interesting to also note that West Flair a few years ago was recognized as one of the top performing wastewater treatment works in the country. This is just an illustration in terms of where the location is. This is where the water treatment plant is located. This is where the pond, our infiltration ponds, pond 7 is located. The coastal recharge ponds are here at the bottom here, closer to the sea, and our wellfield is sort of the Witwatersrand wellfield is throughout here in the Quebec sort of nature reserve, the Eskom area, and the Witwatersrand nature reserve here. We also have another wellfield across here, which is the Silverstrom wellfield, and we also in the process of just going back to taking water from the Silverstrom way as well. Yeah, and that's just the Atlantis town. Yeah, so as part of this is it was an operational scheme, but obviously there was some refurbishment that had to be taking place of the current infrastructure. And so there was new boreholes that were drilled and equipped with new infrastructure, but also there's additional monitoring that was put in place, and the testing as well of the newly drilled boreholes. And so we've equipped roughly 33 sort of production boreholes from the Witwatersrand area, and we've got about 13 or 14 in the Silverstrom area. So yeah, that's the fleet of sort of the production boreholes that we have in place. And this is just a constant discharge test that was done in the production boreholes And then as part of the development or the refurbishment of the scheme, we also looked at refurbishing the managed aquifer recharge infrastructure, and this is the conditioning point that I spoke to you earlier. So we're in the process of actually completing the refurbishment of this pond with putting in some new engineering infrastructure and just improving its conditioning processes so that we ensure that we improve the quality of water that we use for recharge, and so that's sort of nearing its completion. But what we've also done as part of the development or the refurbishment of this scheme is that we've developed some new numerical models that can help us in the management and help us from a predictive perspective in terms of what can be done, what can be obtained from the resource, and how we can better manage the resource. And so yeah, that was done as part of this process. And then there's continuous monitoring that we are doing, and obviously improving on our monitoring as well. What we've also done, which is similarly to what is in the Cape Flats, is the development of the groundwater protection zones. As with the Cape Flats, any new development now is subject to input from bulk water and indicating any mitigation measures that we would like to put in place to ensure that the resource is protected as far as possible and the water sources are not compromised in any way by new development. And so the types of challenges that we've experienced, obviously the complexity in terms of the development of the scheme. I mean, these are quite world-class and sort of innovative in a sense. And so it's complex and it requires a lot of a few technical expertise, not just from the service provider, but also what we had to do was also develop internal capacity. And so the city also undertook a process of actually hiring hydrogeologists. I think this is the only metro in the country that has 3 hydrogeologists. 2 of those hydrogeologists are sitting at bulk water, which is myself and Daniel Mulder. And obviously, looking at the complexity, we had to put in a lot of investment in terms of the infrastructure and the monitoring that needs to be put in place to ensure that we are in compliance with the relevant water use authorizations and environmental authorizations in place. But also, we need to ensure that there's adequate environmental management, even though it's in a complex sort of environment. There's also issues that we had to deal with, from land encroachment and vandalism and theft of infrastructure. Which is also a bit of an issue. And then from a regulatory perspective, obviously, because of the development of the scheme or the development of the schemes came through the recent crisis, the water crisis, we were issued with the Section 38 directive to sort of go ahead in the implementation of these schemes. And obviously, there's the complex water use license conditions that we were sort of subject to as well in terms of the development of the scheme. And then obviously, just to also mitigate against such things, we've also had sort of regular interactions with regulatory authorities. We've got our update meetings where we talk about the potential wetland offsets that we might need. But also we've got the monitoring committees for the Cape Flats, for TMGA, and the new one that is starting for Atlantis on Friday, where we regularly engage with the not just the regulators, but also the interested and affected party, which register to be part of the monitoring committees. And then obviously there's also some water quality challenges that we had to deal with, which then for us to deal with those, we've employed the latest water treatment technologies, and also ensure that we implement the managed aquifer recharge component of it is also to help in improving the quality of water that's in the aquifer, because there might be issues coming from the fact that there is existing land use development on top of these aquifers, which may have affected the quality. And so implementing MAR actually assists us in improving the quality of this water as well. And of course, we've got an extensive monitoring program that is regularly checked and updated. And then obviously the existing land use development that are in place and any new land use developments that are coming into place. What we've undertaken as bulk water as well is we undertook a project to determine the best groundwater management framework that will assist us to sort of manage the resource that we are dealing with. And we have started to put in or implement some of the recommendations that come from that study. And I think I did mention earlier that we've engaged with DFFE to include the groundwater protection zones in the screening tool. We are engaging with the National Department of Water and Sanitation to also establish what we call the Aquifer Advisory Forum that will assist us to pull information with all the other groundwater users and not just focus on the city of Cape Town. So we are putting in a lot of effort to ensure that we protect the resource and we protect the water that the city is tapping into from a diversification perspective, and also to ensure that we reduce any treatment costs that might come. So in terms of if there's any queries, you are more than welcome to contact myself, Pianim Simango. You're welcome to contact my colleague, Daniel Mulder, and also you're welcome to contact Dr. Lloyd Fisher-Chaps. I apologize, Council. I see I've gone through my time, but I really apologize for that. It's a bit difficult for me to slow down or to stop when I have to talk about groundwater.
Pilani, we definitely, I think, felt the same passion with which you presented the information tonight. Councillors and also to the residents who have joined us and other stakeholders, thank you again for being here. I hope that the presentation for you was informative. Informative in the sense that this is currently work that is underway in our municipality, as is clear from the information that has been shared, but also even more clear from the images that have been shared. Further, that the groundwater program as part of our new water interventions is an important component. And I hope that you take away further that it's not only about taking out water from the aquifer, but actually making sure that the management of these aquifers are done responsibly as well, which Pilani has shared with us in the presentation. And I think for me, because it's such an important part of the work that I do in terms of community engagement, that you can see that there's a real effort to try and ensure that community members, users, stakeholders, residents in general are part of the conversation. As was emphasized in one of the later slides, where the point of monitoring committees was made. And to that effect, just to re-emphasize what I would say is an invitation to, especially the councillors in those areas who know of stakeholders who may want to participate, but to get involved in the next meeting, which will take place in Atlantis this Friday. If I recall correctly, it really is a great opportunity for each one of you to remain involved and hands-on in terms of the work that is currently underway. So I'm looking at the chat at the moment. I don't see any questions. I also don't see any hands at the moment. I maybe will just pause for a second and see if there are any volunteers. I see Mr. Hamlin's hand. I see Councillor Moodley's hand. We'll come to you in just a second. And I also see, sorry, that there was a Q&A that was started by my colleague, Pierre, touching on insights into water quality of the aquifers versus the quality of the treated effluent. And I think, I don't want to get ahead of this, but I think maybe Mr. Hamlin is going to take us to that question. Jamie, do you want to come in, and then Council Alderman Moodley can follow you?
Hi, good evening, Zahid and Co. I must say the presentation was very insightful. It's encouraging. I think we're all in support of, future-proofing ourselves, but I think we always need to be mindful of, new evidence and concerns we have pertaining to the environment and how we treat it. And I think the evidence I was referring to pertains to water quality by and large. I think this item has been raised several times, that the SANS 241 water quality thresholds as they stand need to be updated to consider pharmaceuticals, chemicals of emerging concern, and a long list of things which aren't included. And I think that's probably the cornerstone of the discussion, that we need to be very mindful that whilst these plans are very grand and are to future-proof ourselves, we need to be mindful that we've got to be very careful what we put into our water reserves from a legacy standpoint, and we need to be very, very cautious around that. So I think that's my first comment, and I know that there's going to be updates to this, and no one knows when, but I think we just need to be mindful that we are certain that we're not going to be making mistakes to fulfill this going forward. I think, as you are well aware, there was a presentation by Professor Leslie Petrick at the MOP, where we spoke heavily about the growing evidence around pharmaceuticals and chemicals found in marine life. And I think that is a clear indication as to how we need to take guidance from independents. And that sort of research. I know the City of Cape Town's done its own research. I don't have the paper offhand, but I think it's published by Stone Paper. And that in itself showed the prevalence of chemicals found in False Bay, etc. And although we largely focus on E. coli and enterococci as parameters of that, around water quality from a coastal and recreational standpoint, I think we need to be very careful of our health going forward, with microplastics also becoming a growing need. So I think I just really want to just make those points. I don't think it's so much a question, but just the takeaway that we need to answer and be very, very cautious around water quality thresholds if the current guidelines aren't adequate to the knowledge and the research which indicates we need to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Yes, absolutely. We recall at the Permit Advisory Forum the inputs made by Professor Petrick and also just the growing scientific body of knowledge and also, I would say, general concern around CECs. And the point you make is well made. And I think an important point for us to be able to respond to in terms of ultimately giving you as residents and all the councillors and everyone here as residents, essentially the confidence that what we're putting in is actually of an acceptable standard considering the growing body of knowledge. I see Director Michael Killick's hands up. Alderman Moodley, I noticed that your hand is down, so I think I'm going to give to Director Killick, and then if you've got a follow-up question, Alderman Moodley, you're more than welcome to come back in. Director?
Thanks, Councillor. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Maybe just to address Jamie's concerns. Just like the for a new water scheme, we are also doing a risk-based analysis based on SANS 241. So it's not only the parameters in SANS 241 which we're looking at. So for the managed aquifer recharge scheme for the Cape Flats, we're actually doing additional advanced water treatment, which includes coagulation, flocculation, dual media filtration, ozonation, and biologically activated filtration, as well as stabilization and UV. So we are putting a very good quality water into the aquifer. And then one must also bear in mind that there's a retention time in the aquifer. And the water which we abstract from the aquifer, we also do a further additional treatment and we base that additional treatment on the water quality of the aquifer. So in certain instances, if it's a high salinity, we actually have to do reverse osmosis. So Jamie can be rest assured that we are doing a risk-based analysis, taking extensive water quality monitoring samples, testing them, and making sure that there is adequate removal of contaminants of emerging concern as well. Don't know if that's addressed your query, Jamie.
Thanks, Mike. Let's quickly hear from Jamie if there's maybe a follow-up to that. Jamie?
Yeah, thanks. I think I've raised the question several times, and it's the first time that I've received a sort of very concise and sort of higher level understanding to that question. And I think it's pertinent because it hasn't been raised in the other forums. So it's obviously encouraging to hear that information, but I think it's very important that it's actually put into the public domain and understood how those thresholds are going to be sort of adopted and what those guidelines are. Because in absence of that, and I think, I've been, if I can say, schooled in inverted commas by, other academics and researchers, and they're going on the basis of what they've been advised without any higher articulation or indication as to what else we can expect. That's what we as lay people are aware of, and obviously that's what we base our concerns and opinions upon. So I think it's important that further communication articulates these viewpoints and these understandings, so we're very clear about that and understand how the monitoring is conducted, etc. It goes back to that slide that was presented, and I've subsequently sent you that information to the source of that slide, which was disputed around the discharge water qualities around the peninsula from the 23 wastewater treatment plants. And even though that is not really going into our aquifers or anything, it is going into the environment, and those are the areas of concern we have. Is if the baseline is not at the levels that we would expect them to be or wish them to be, we're naturally going to be worried as the public going forward. So I think that's just my parting comment. I'm open-minded to that it is an ongoing discussion, but I think my points are quite clear that we need to be articulated to these developments. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, if I could just add that the managed aquifer recharge scheme, which we're putting in, does make allowance for additional treatment processes if we see that we do require them after monitoring. And if I could also ask the councillors and Jamie to be on the lookout for our water outlook, which should be going to Portfolio Committee next month, and then MACO and Council. And that actually does describe in much more detail all of these schemes, including the managed aquifer recharge scheme and treatment processes.
Thanks, Mike. And I just want to come back to Jamie's point, because for me, this is the value of these engagements, that we're demystifying all the important work that the city is undertaking at the moment, because really it shouldn't be a secret in terms of what technology is being utilized to purify water that ultimately will become part of our drinking water supply, because we as the city, you as city leadership and administrators have to give residents the confidence that they're drinking safe, quality drinking water, which we're obviously proud about in terms of our current drinking standards. And so I'm really happy to hear that, Mike, through your response, and giving really a high-level overview around the technologies that are going to be utilized, that it is absolutely one of our priorities in the city to make sure that we are going to be purifying and then again treating water to an acceptable standard. But James' point is well known, and I think for our communication purposes, we have to make it easy for our residents to understand. I've got David's hand up. David?
Thanks, Councillor. Just to add that each of the treatment plants has a water safety plan and a water safety planning process. And, within that plan, which is, distributable to everybody, is a very detailed analysis of all the treatment barriers, as well as the standards, the international standards that set thresholds that we strive to make sure that the water is treated to. So just to add to that, thanks.
Great, thank you. I want to check in with Alderman Moodley. Alderman, you have a question or you've been covered?
Chair, thank you so much. I think that what happens with the system is that after so many seconds or a minute, then your hand goes down automatically. Some of the part of my questions has been answered thanks to Mr. Mike Killick and you to a certain degree. I'll wait on the portfolio for next month to look at that full report on some of the things that I want to raise. But one aspect I can raise right now is with all our investments in the different wastewater works in terms of the improving the quality of our water, what would be the shortfall that we still require if we use all our treatment works in terms of improving the quality of that water and have them recharge into the aquifer so that we could reutilize them as compared to going the expensive route of desalination. That's one question. And the second one is, whilst we look at the water qualities and we look at groundwater, we must also look at the weather patterns that have changed as part of our own contribution to that of the natural occurrences. Should we not concurrently take a bold step from this portfolio, if you haven't done that already, to start addressing the issues of planting hundreds, if not thousands, of trees across the city, and as you know, that makes a huge difference in terms of the weather pattern. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman. Specifically with regard to your second question, please do come back at our follow-up Water Wednesday webinars where we'll deal specifically with the removal of alien invasive plants actually. Especially located in our dam catchment areas. But to that, in terms of your question, I don't know if we're in a position to answer that necessarily, but better placed, I imagine, for our colleagues in community services and health, where they look after the